We are only about an hour and a half away from the polls closing in this gubernatorial recall election. Welcome back. I'm Carlo Cicchetto.
I'm Marcella Lee. While some voters are adamant that Governor Gavin Newsom must go, the process of how we got here certainly has its critics. One of those who is calling for reform to the recall process is Thad Kouser, professor and chairman of the political science department at UC San Diego.
Professor Kouser joins us right now. Thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. We'll get to reform, but wanted to start out with a couple of months back. It seemed like the recall had its momentum to remove the governor. Then things changed. Where are we tonight, and where do you feel it's going?
Right. Well, the polls, which were really up in the air, this was an up for grabs race just over a month ago. They've solidified where polling agency after polling agency seems to be showing a 10 to 20% point lead for Gavin Newsom to be surviving this recall. But they've also made it clear that if the recall is successful, that Larry Elder is the strong leader in the replacement race and likely to get the most votes there.
Governor Newsom's campaign has instructed his supporters not to even vote on the second part of the ballot, the second question, and choosing a successor should he be recalled. How do you think that's going to play into tonight's results?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most confounding and really unhealthy things for our democracy that we've seen in this election. You know, can you remember an election in American history where one party has asked its voters to really just essentially sit out, to give themselves no voice in that election? And oh, by the way, months and months ago, Gavin Newsom and the Democratic political establishment made sure that there was going to be no really strong Democrat in that replacement race, leaving those who want to cast a ballot in it with very few good options. I think that political strategy, which I think we'll see if these results in the polls hold, may prove to be a winning political strategy. It's not healthy for our democracy because it doesn't bring a full and representative electorate to make this together, to make this really consequential choice about who our next governor should be.
Speaking of healthy democracies and what that looks like, you've written that it's time to change California's recall process. Does a big win for Governor Gavin Newsom make change more likely in a process? And what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah, I think that would actually create this moment for reform. So back in 2003, remember, the Democrats had just faced this huge humiliating loss, right? They lost by the rules of the game of the recall. And so the Democratic legislators, and that's where all reform would need to start, just if they had moved to change the rules, it would have looked like sour grapes, right? But if Democrats win, if Gavin Newsom survives this recall, it creates an opportunity for Democrats to say, you know what, we won under these rules, but we think they're not right for California. And the legislature could either put up to the voters in November 2020 a set of reforms that they would propose themselves, or they could create an independent commission that would come up with reform ideas and deliberate over lots of different ways that we could rewrite the rules of recalls in California.
I know ideas have been tossed around since 2003. Now we find ourselves here in 2021. Some of those solutions to providing reform include increasing the signature requirement, perhaps a runoff race. Talk about, you know, what some of the things you see could help make the recall process more fair.
Sure. I think some of the things that I've heard from people when I talk with my friends and family about this race and what doesn't make sense is, wait a minute, how can the first question, the recall question, be decided by a simple majority and the next one by a plurality? How could we have a new governor who actually gets less support than the old governor? One way to fix that would be by having a runoff between the top two candidates who emerge out of that replacement race. Another would be by saying that, look, let's focus this recall about whether the governor's done a good job or not, whether there's some criminal action or corruption. You could spell that out in the recall, or you could make the race focused on that governor and their performance by ensuring that the next governor would go to the lieutenant governor if the governor's recalled. Make it work like the impeachment process. So it's really focused on the crime and the offense rather than, hey, here's a new candidate who we could get to lead the state in a different direction. That's what our normally scheduled elections are for.
UC San Diego political science professor Thad Kouser, thank you so much for spending some time to talk election and election processes, things we're going to talk about a lot more in the coming days. I have a good idea. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.